Hi, Kwang.
Hi Brian, hi everyone. We are from Present Scholar Portfolio, and we feel like for our several meeting recently, Google have been in a part of our discussion, and we find that Google and their current lawsuit is a very interesting topic for us to discuss for our podcast today.
Yeah, so apparently we've been discussing about Google a lot in our portfolio discussions these past couple of weeks. So we really wanted to delve a bit more into the stock and what are the implications for these antitrust actions and if they actually will affect whether the stock will move up or down or not.
Okay, first of all, let's going out to our agenda. So, firstly, we will discuss what is happening to Google, and we can talk about a little bit more about its business model, what is at stake to choose a lawsuit. We also can discuss some of the previous antitrust cases, and finally, we can make consideration of what we should consider when seeing Google as potential buying opportunity or not. So let's talk about Google first and what is happening to it. Well, we know that the Department of Justice they launched a monopoly investigation about Google for their monopoly in the market, about their search engine and advertising. And it's had been quite being invested quite for a long time, and the current result is said that Google might have to divest their Chrome and also advertising and even other segment. Brian, can you tell me about the event that lead to the investigation?
Yeah, of course. So this has been going for quite a while now, but it's been these actions get from the FTC, they've been a bit more they've been scrutinizing Google a bit more closely these like past couple of years, mainly due to I guess the Biden administration for the most part, but President Trump is the new president. It'll be interesting to see how these will move going forward. But as I mentioned previously, this has been happening for a while now. So here's a quick timeline of these antitrust actions against Google. So, starting in 2010, this was a year that marked the beginning of formal investigations into Google's practices. So, the European Commission, they launched an inquiry into Google search practices, and they were focusing on whether the company was, unfairly favoring its own services in its search results. So, fast forward into 2013, we see a major first development in the US. So, the Federal Trade Commission, or we'll just say FTC for short, concluded a lengthy investigation into Google's practices. So, surprisingly, they closed the case without taking any action. But yeah, so apparently that decision was very controversial to everyone, and it led to criticism that the FTC hasn't done enough to curb Google's like growing power. Um, and then moving forward to the year 2017, which was a landmark year, the European Commission imposed a massive 2.42 billion euros fine on Google. So this penalty was for violating antitrust laws related to its shopping service, which the commission found was being unfairly promoted in the search results at the expense of its competitors. So going back to what I said about, those. And then moving forward to 2020, so COVID and everything. This marked a significant escalation for the U.S. So the Department of Justice, they filed a major antitrust lawsuit against Google, and so they have finally started to take real action, accusing them of maintaining an illegal monopoly over search and search advertising. And this was the most substantial legal challenge to Google's business practices in the U.S. since the breakup of AT&T in the 1980s. So this is not something the FTC does often. The first time they actually broke up a company was like I believe was Standard Oil and all like the oil companies like how the oil companies they have a big monopoly and everything. So whatever the government was at the time, they had to break that up. And then the second time it happened was I believe was with AT&T, and that was another successful case. But then ever since that hasn't happened again and until like well still hasn't happened yet. And then in 2021, the pressure intensified as several U.S. states joined the federal lawsuit. So additionally, states like Texas, they filed their own lawsuits alleging that Google had engaged in anti-competitive behavior in its digital advertising businesses. And then these continued to escalate until the year 2023, last year, between both the US and Europe. So the European Commission investigated Google's advertising practices, while various US states they pursued additional claims against the company. And then finally, in 2024, so this year, so there's still a lot of legal scrutiny against Google. So some recent updates from that case. So uh, Google had proposed that limited changes to address a court ruling that it illegally maintained a monopoly in online search, but they also resisted the broader remedies sought by the U.S. government. I guess so. Basically, the big problem here is that um, Google Google is engaging in potential anti-competitive behavior, even though it's like potentially what they want to do with their business. Because as a corporation, I guess the main purpose of a corporation is to continue growing and then continue growing. This could be like, I don't know, acquiring companies, and that could go both ways. So. I don't know, but what do you think, Kwang? Do you actually think this is like a good thing for us people as like citizens?
Well, obviously, as we say, we can see that the Chrome is like having a very high like usage from customer, and if it didn't bring breakdown, it will benefit the consumer like us, like other company, and well, for sure it can be helpful for us, but we kind of sure about that yet.
Yeah, for me personally, I think it's a good thing. Yeah, so yeah, I've done a lot of research on this actually, and um I think it's really important, like, we don't allow these companies to continue growing so much to the point where it's just growing for the sake of growing, not just for the sake of growing to benefit us consumers as potential, users of their services. So, just for context, why antitrust is even a thing. So in the context of tech, these companies are likely to be, gatekeepers of important platforms and services that place them in a position to determine who can participate in the market and which businesses will succeed or fail. Um, so I recently read this article, regarding the investigation by the House Judiciary Committee, and they recently found that these businesses frequently indulge in practices called killer acquisitions. So it's basically where they like copy like innovative products from smaller companies or like startups, and that makes it even more difficult for like new businesses to like flourish, and it reduces options for us consumers. So we're like forced to buy like this one product. Basically actually taken from like the like a slide deck by the FTC when they're like suing Google. But basically their three main arguments was one, Google is like controlling the competition. Not too familiar with these companies, but basically, Google has been taking their their dominance way too far, so they're being acquiring like key smaller players in the market, in the tech industry. So, for example, DFP, this is a small company called DoubleClick for Publishers. DFP was a major tool that website owners used to manage and sell their ad space. And by acquiring DFP, Google gained control over a crucial part of the ad tech ecosystem. Another acquisition they did was AdMeld. So this was in 2011. They were also another rising competitor to Google in like the advertising space. So this allowed Google to eliminate another potential threat and and retain its like position as a number one player in the digital advertising market. And then the second argument that the FTC used against Google was that they were controlling their customers. So basically, their next move was to limit its customers' ability to work with their competitors. So here are some like smaller companies you probably never heard about either: Kevel, PubMatic, AppNexus, and Magnite. So these are examples of Google's competitors in various parts of the advertising technology industry. So Google implemented strategies to make it difficult for these advertisers and publishers to use these alternative platforms effectively. For example, Google made its advertising demand from Google Ads exclusive to its own ad exchange. And then finally, their last one of their last arguments is that they also control the rules. So they're in a position to set rules that benefit themselves and disadvantage their competitors. So they apparently manipulate auction processes to favor its own ad exchange. It also implemented policies that made it harder for publishers to compare prices between Google's ad exchange and those of competitors. And finally, the company also introduced a unified pricing rules that limited publishers' ability to set different price floors for different exchanges, which effectively forced more transactions through Google's system. And then by controlling all three of these aspects, competition, customers, and the rules of the game, Google is able to establish and maintain, their dominant position in the digital advertising space. And this all led to reduced competition, higher costs for advertisers, and lower revenues for website publishers. Uh, it hurts us as consumers. It hurts innovation. It hurts other things as well. It could lead, data privacy, wages even, when you have one company controlling the market. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. It's labor market efficiency. Basically, when you're like trying to get a new job, you're forced to stick with one company because they don't have any competitors, and basically that company has control of what wages they can give to you as a potential employee. So you wouldn't get any competitive wages. So it's a really bad thing. But again, it's still like a bit of a gray area depending on how you view it.
Okay. So what is at stake here? We know that Google revenue stream is highly concentrated for their advertising and uh, and their search engine. And recently, uh, the government asking or maybe forcing the company to divest their search engine Chrome and even have to sell or divest their Android smartphone operating system. Also, several of their other assets, several, so that we can see that Google is being depart to many other company or like being break down very heavily
Yeah,
from
so
it.
another issue that so the FCC they suggested to ban exclusive paid agreements. So what does this mean? Ban exclusive paid agreement. This is when basically banning Google from from their agreements that they would be the default search engine. So banning exclusive paid agreements. Another thing is to allow rival search engines to access data. So it's another thing just to ban them from being the default search engine outright. But another thing is to also allow rival search engines to access the data. So as I mentioned before, Google has like a vast amounts of data, user data. They collect data from advertisements, from what you put in the search engine. That all goes into their database. Basically, the FTC is suggesting that by allowing rival search engines to access that data, that will help increase competition. So those competitors they would be able to improve their services using the data that Google has. And finally, divestiture of Google's AI products. Basically, any AI products that could potentially compete with search. FTC is also suggesting that. Yeah, and so this is not something that's happened before. So the only the other big cases that actually lit scrutiny against other tech companies. But I'm not familiar with any of them. Kwang, do you have any cases?
Well, we can see that looking from history, there have been several antitrust cases that relate to big tech company. Well, first of all, let's look at back way into the 90s. Well, Microsoft at that time, they emerged as a dominant player in the PC operating system market. We know from like Internet Explorer, which we usually like laughing at very slow search engine, very slow website, something like that. But back then, Microsoft was allegedly used it as a monopoly powers in their operating system market to suppress competitor and harm consumers. Because back then, Microsoft was having a very powerful operating system that most companies at that time used. So the government they investigate and it took about more than 10 years Microsoft was accused of when Microsoft seek the competition from other competitors for bundling its Internet Explorer browser with Windows for free. Microsoft also required PC manufacturers to install Internet Explorer and also use it as like the main browsers. The company also entered exclusive agreement with Internet service provider to promote Internet Explorer. And at that time, similar to Google, the FTC was investigated first, but then they dropped. But 1 year later, in 1994, the Department of Justice picked it up, and they also investigate. And at that time, Judge Jackson ordered Microsoft to be split into two separate companies, which didn't happen because the U.S. Court appeals overturned because they found maybe the judge is biased, but then the company and the U.S. company still settle the case. Well, moving on to Apple lawsuit, it was in 2019, more about the App Store. So Apple sells iPhone applications directly to iPhone owners use App Store. We all know that, and it is the only place where iPhone owners may lawfully buy apps. Most of apps created by independent developer under contract with Apple. Apple charges the developer $99 annual membership fee and also charge 30% commission on every app sale. And in 2011, four of the iPhone owners sued the company, alleging that Apple has unlawfully monopolized the aftermarket for iPhone apps. Well, fast forward, the ruling allowed the lawsuit claim that Apple was having the App Store and alleged that Apple was violating federal antitrust law. And the decision opened the door for consumer class action lawsuit against Apple, which give other related App Store practice. Well, for the company, their stock price after the ruling was down 17% for the next month. But however, it bounced back like almost double in the next 8 months before the COVID-19 pandemic. The App Store revenue also, well, it's rather service rather than physical product, also have a very great revenue growth. But then the problem is, as we know, as I mentioned above, Apple still gonna face lawsuit from consumer because the decision that allow any other consumers to directly sue Apple. And as of today, while the latest lawsuit, the biggest lawsuit Apple is facing is with Epic Games that they have gone to court several times and is still. Another example is Qualcomm. This is the company I do for my investment report. Also face some antitrust suit, and however, this are the company that actually win the lawsuit, but it's not as simple. January 2017, the FTC filed an anti-lawsuit against Qualcomm, alleged that the company engaged in anti-competitive behavior in market for the CDMA and 4G chips. Well, back and forth in May 2019, judge ruled favor for the FTC, but 1 year later, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit reversed the district court decision, ruled that Qualcomm had no duty under antitrust law to license its competitors and drew out the antitrust ruling. Well, similar to Apple, the stock price down 18% on that week, but then it's bounced back. However, after the appeal, the stock price didn't have a strong increase of some sort. But still, the suit made Qualcomm to change their view towards a no license, no tips policy, and its refusal to license standard essential patents to rival chip manufacturers. They also have to put a cap on the amount of royalty they can earn per unit sales, which previously is just like how much each phone sells a certain percentage. And we can have a many view from this antitrust case from this big tech to discuss more about what will happen to Google in the future. But we can see the trend of increasing antitrust scrutiny towards big tech companies, where well, both Trump first administration and after that Biden one conduct significant investigation. The DOJ, the FTC, well, besides some case we just discussed above, also investigation on Amazon, Meta. Well, now moving back to Google, the current lawsuit is gonna having a very big impact on the company. And if reviewing that a potential investment of some sort. What would you consider, Brian?
Yeah, so first of all, my first thought is this actually going to like go through? Like, I know I mentioned like in the timeline earlier that this has started way back in 2010, so it's been almost like almost 15 years now, and nothing actually serious happened against Google, whether that's divesting some of their business lines or implementing like rules that they had to abide by. So I guess one of the things I really want to find out is like, is the FTC serious about like going through with this? Will Google be able to like, make like good counter arguments why this is not a good thing to do to them? So I guess that would be one of my first thoughts. Like, and yeah, when would you agree with that, Kwang?
Well, we can see that if we um, look deeply into what the government is forcing Google to do is divesting their search engine, their advertising. Well, first of all, if they divest it, if they divest it, who can buy that? Because Google is a 2 trillion, have a 2 trillion market capitalization. And as we know
So if you're
before,
saying, yeah, so Kwang, so if you're saying like if they divest your business, like someone will have to buy it, or will those like
well, of course,
parts?
nobody can buy it by themselves. Probably like have to multiple buyers to buy, and the search engine have to break apart, the advertising revenue has to break apart, or maybe just the search engine. But like I said, it is too big of the things to like how possible to break it down and sell it apart, because it's very big and it's not easy, not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, so even yeah, so even if Google does divest, my thoughts is like, I feel like a lot of their like business lines they can stand alone as like independent companies, and Google by itself, even with those like even with those divested business lines, I feel like uh they could still be a strong competitor in the market, whether that's just like a strong competitor or even if they lose their business lines. So my second consideration would be like if they decide to divest uh, Chrome search, do you think business as a Google by itself, do you think it could be standalone entity without those like, services like Chrome?
Well, it is hard to say. Well, first of all, I don't believe the Google can sell the search engine, cannot can sell the Chrome, because well, I think even though the other segment, other business still like still big, still have many opportunity, but the point is it is too integrated into a single company, and like breaking apart is too complexity. And like for your question, like should other segment survive, should other segment continue to grow, I think they possibly can do that, but then they have to like have still have the backbone of the search engine, some of the advertising. And well, if the government want Google to break apart, they have to find, or Google themselves have to find a suitable ways to do it. And I think that what an option can be is that Google provide other competitors they free f- provide a company their data about search engine, they not the technology, but then because like the reason Google have a very powerful search engine, because they have a very big consumer data, and they use them to like constantly improve their technology, and this make other companies that cannot fight with Google. And I think maybe Google will be forced to share with the competitor and also have to pay a very big fine for that.
Mhm.
But I don't think Google can be break down should we break down? And but we still have to see.
Yeah, but I think Google, I guess according to the latest earnings report, I feel like they've been pretty successful despite all these like antitrust actions. So apparently, even like when ChatGPT came out back in like late 2022, Google has still been like growing their revenue and cash flow quite nicely. They've been like investing heavily in AI, which has been very beneficial for their whole business. Gemini, the AI powered search, their cloud, so Google Cloud, the growth for that has in recent quarters has also been pretty phenomenal with 35% year over year growth. And they're still in third place behind, Microsoft Azure and AWS, but they're positioned well to like, catch up to those two. And search, Google search, it also grew 12 to 13% last quarter. So overall, Google has been doing well despite, all these actions. So I feel like even if they do divest, I feel like um, Google will still be a strong company fundamentally by itself. They have well, a good history, good fundamentals. So I feel like even if like stock goes down, it will eventually go back up regardless. Um and that just brings us to our point where it could be a potential buying opportunity when people like overreact and think this might be this might spell doom for Google. So I don't know, but would you agree with that or any other?
I have another consideration that to to yeah another thing need to be considered is that if they do have to sell their part, have to sell their crew, how much they gonna get? It's really that is a very big question then. Like if they can sell and get a lot of money, they can well that's still because like if we take a part of what Google having right now, we certainly have if we considering buying Google as an investment, we should like analyze and maybe having a rough uh, valuation for the Google search engine and see if the company able to sell it, how much they gonna earn, and if that can be a good money for potential investment or just return to shareholder to dividend or share repurchase, that still good idea, something like that.
Mhm.
So if they kind of sell for a good price, maybe it's still a negative result coming from the lawsuit and might be not worth to buy Google, and it's still a consideration.
Yeah, so that's a bit of some I guess context and a little update about what's happening with Google lately, um, how long this has been happening for, some similar cases and what happened related to that. So thank you everyone. So that's our podcast about Google antitrust. So just some considerations about when you're buying a stock like this. But thanks again. Thank you, Kwang, for participating in this podcast with me. It was like great to hear your thoughts about all this. And we hope that you anyone who's watching this podcast that you'll be able to learn something useful. So thanks again.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Thank you for the podcast.